Welcome back to Bullet Catcher Gaming. This is of course Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and this is episode 3 of our real life operator series, where today we are going to be focusing on Marcus Luttrell and Operation Red Wings. Now, if you want to obviously watch this whole thing in full, you can see the movie Lone Survivor. I'm sure most of you have already seen it. Marcus Luttrell's book is also entitled Lone Survivor. Check both of those out if you have not either read or watched that movie. Really good, and gives you a good indication of what went on. Very accurate, and I think in terms of military films, Lone Survivor is a very good one. Now, Marcus Luttrell was born in Houston, Texas on November 7th, 1975. He began training for the US Navy SEALs at the tender age of 14 with US Army veteran Billy Shelton. He lived near Luttrell's home. Now, Luttrell trained every day with his twin brother Morgan, along with other people as well, and they were obviously inspiring to join the US Navy and other special operations forces. Now, Luttrell enlisted in the US Navy in March 1999, and he graduated from boot camp and the Hospital Corpsman A School. He transferred to Basic Underwater Demolition, SEAL Buds Class 226. However, due to a fractured femur, he suffered from falling off a rope. He actually graduated with Class 228 on April 21st, 2000 after completing Buds. Now, Luttrell attended the Army Jump School and SEAL qualification training, and Luttrell earned his Navy enlisted classification NEC 5326, combatant swimmer and naval special warfare insignia on February 2nd, 2001 after completing SQT. He was then sent to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for the Special Operations Combat Medic. And he also did an additional 6 months of advanced training in conventional and unconventional medical skills. This was ranging from diagnosis and treatment of many conditions to advanced emergency medicine and battlefield life support. He was then deployed to Iraq with SEAL Team 5 on April 14th, 2003. During the 2003 invasion of Iraq to root out and destroy leftover Iraqi resistance, and joined in the search for WMDs. He also carried out operations to eliminate or capture terrorists. Now, he was deployed to Afghanistan in 2005 with SEAL Team 10 as part of the SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team, SVD-1, and whilst in Afghanistan he was obviously involved in Operation Red Wings, which I'm going to cover in detail in a minute. This is obviously going to be that incredible story, and along with his 3 teammates who he was on that mission with, who sadly all passed away that day. Matthew Gene Axelson, who died on June 28th, 2005. Michael Patrick Murphy, who also sadly died on that day. And Danny Philip Dietz Jr., who once again also perished on that day. If you'd like any of these gentlemen covered in more depth in their own singular video, I'm more than happy to do that. Now, after the initial invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, US military and coalition partner operations kind of shifted from a kinetic operations to those of a counterinsurgency, also known as COIN, C-O-I-N, nature. And one of the primary goals of the coalition by 2004 in Afghanistan was obviously nation building. That is providing a security environment conducive to the establishment and growth of a democratically elected government, as well as infrastructure support. And a key milestone of this campaign would be on September 18th, 2005, in the national parliamentary elections. Now, whilst many of Afghanistan's provinces at this time had a stable security environment, one of the most restive and continued to be the Kunar province, which lies in the eastern Afghanistan on the border with Pakistan. So for election results obviously to be seen as legitimate by the citizens of Afghanistan and the world at large, these elections throughout the country would need to kind of proceed unencumbered, so effectively without external influence by either American or coalition forces, Taliban or anti-American coalition forces, including those in Kunar. Now, insurgent activity in Kunar province, during this time came from about 22 identified groups, individual groups which ranged in allegiance from those with tenuous ties to the Taliban and Al-Qaeda to the majority that were little more than kind of local criminals. These groups were collectively known as the Anti-Coalition Militia, the ACM, and a common thread amongst all of these was a strong resistance to the unification of the country and subsequent increasing presence of national government entities in the Kunar region, because they'd be a threat to their activities effectively. These activities are attempting to aid resurgent neo-Taliban to lumber smuggling with the goal of successful elections in Kunar. Military operations in the area were focused primarily on the disruption of ACM activity, and these military operations utilise a number of different units and operational constructs to achieve this goal. Now, the 3rd Battalion of the 3rd Marine Regiment 3-3, which deployed to the Regional Command East, which was known as RC East, which included Kunar Province in late 2004, they were there to conduct stability and counterinsurgency operations in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Identified a number of operational barriers due to Special Operations Command doctrine for the battalion's counterinsurgency work in the area. Now, these barriers included non-sharing of intelligence to the battalion, non-disclosure of impending raids by special ops units. To mitigate these problems, 3-3 staff developed an operational model which integrated special ops forces into their operations, allowing the sharing of intelligence between the battalion and other special operations forces, as well as maintaining solid operational control of operations with integrated spec ops assets and units by the battalion. So operations that 3-3 conducted based on this model proved successful in disrupting ACM activity. The first of these was Operation Spurs, named after the San Antonio Spurs basketball team that was in 2005 in the Korengal Valley. And then there were effectively kind of 5-phase operation that put that one together. Similar operations that followed was you had the Dallas Mavericks one, which was Operation Mavericks, and then you had the Boston Celtics one, which was obviously Operation Celtics. They was in April 2005. And the Celtics one was in May 2005. Now, these operations, all of which included SEALs, were conceived and planned by the battalion, and specifics of those phases involved Navy SEALs being planned, the Navy SEALs planning all of these operations effectively. Each operation lasted between 3 and 4 weeks. Now, 3-3 planned and executed approximately one of these operations per month, maintaining consistent operational tempo. In 2005, they forced a number of surrenders of high-value targets. An ACM commander known as Najmuddin. He based his operations out of the Korengal Valley, but obviously him not being there anymore left a power vacuum in the region. Now, 3-3 tracked a number of ACM groups they determined could possibly be seeking to fill this power void. The battalion began planning a new operation entitled Operation Stars, based after the Dallas Stars, of course. And I believe it was their battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Norman Cooling. He hailed from Texas, so he was choosing the operation names. So, focusing on disrupting ACM activity, obviously after Najmuddin's surrender, the activity had dropped, and specific groups were being difficult to pinpoint. But in May 2005, an advance party of 3-3 sister battalion, the 2nd Battalion of the 3rd Marine Regiment, they arrived, and then before deploying to Afghanistan, their intelligence officer, Captain Scott Westerfield, and his assistants had been tracking a small cell led by a man named Ahmad Shah, and he was based on intelligence back to 3-3's intelligence officers. And they found out that Shah was from a remote region in Nangarhar province, which borders the south side of Kunar province. Shah, they determined, was responsible for approximately 11 incidents against coalition forces, and of course government of Afghanistan entities as well, including small arms ambushes, improvised explosive device attacks. And by June 2005, 2-3 had relieved in place of 3-3 and had taken the STARS concept and developed a comprehensive operation which they now called Operation Red Wings. Now, the goal of this was disrupting anti-coalition militia activity, with an emphasis on disrupting Ahmed Shah's activities, which were based near the summit of Sautalo Sar. Now, 2-3's battalion staff immediately began planning Red Wings as soon as they arrived in Afghan, and Lieutenant Colonel Andrew McManus, 2-3's battalion commander, and his staff wanted to maintain the operational tempo set by 3-3. Operations Officer Major Thomas Wood began planning Red Wings off the STARS base, which once again was a 5-phase operation. Now, Scott Westerfield, the intelligence officer, was focused learning on further about Ahmad Shah. His overall intelligence picture of Shah took a substantial leap when Second Lieutenant Regan Turner, a platoon commander with 2-3's Whiskey Company, a weapons company augmented to function a bit like an infantry line company, gathered a wealth of human intelligence about Shah during a patrol, including his full name, and Ahmad Shah Dara Ainur, so Ahmad Shah of the Valley of the Enlightened Ones. They found out his birthplace, also lots about where he could be based out of, where he lived, his aliases, loads of information all about him. Also about his team size, which they thought was about 50 to 100 fighters, and what his aspirations were. And basically that was to impede upcoming elections and attempt to aid a resurgent Taliban in the region. So he was kind of unknown in the region, though. He apparently held regional aspirations and possibly had assistance of Gulbuddin Hekmatar. So Second Lieutenant Turner also gathered a number of photographs of Shah. So further intelligence, including human intelligence and signals intelligence, indicated that Shah had based his insurgent group out of some small structures outside the village of Chikau, high on the slopes of the Sautalo Sar mountain in the upper Korangal Valley, about 20 miles to the west of Kunar's provincial capital, Islamabad. Using different intelligence and images taken from a UAV, Westerfield identified likely structures used for housing this team. The fact that they were IED making, and overwatch of the area began, also being careful for IED strikes. The intelligence staff identified 4 named areas of interest, or NIAs, containing specific structures which Shah might be using. Now, these named areas and interests were specific buildings determined by analysing and process a number of instances of variety of intelligence, like I said, signals, human, and images as well. Westerfield and his staff determined that Shah and his men had been responsible for multiple incidents recently, and they were looking to take him out. And what they decided they would do is that in late June, that Shah and his men occupying that area of Chikau, that's where they had put him. It was a time of low lunar illumination, so the operation would require a helicopter insertion of forces to cordon the area and search for Shah and his men, and they sought to conduct this operation at night after positive identification of Shah by Marine Corps Scout Sniper Team. They would walk into the area under the cover of darkness some nights before. Now, as with 3-3 before them, 2-3 sought to use Special Operations Forces assets for Red Wings, but unlike 3-3, they only sought the use of Special Operations Aviation assets. This was initially turned down, and they were then given basically pretty much everything that they needed, and they were told, no, if you're going to use special forces, you are going to utilize all of them. So the SEALs were then involved much deeper into this operation, along with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. So effectively, after the initial phases of Red Wings, 2-3 would be considered the lead, but until that point the SEALs kind of had control. Late in the night of June 27, 2005, two MH-47 Special Operations aircraft of the 160th SAW approached Sao Tar as one of the aircraft performed a number of decoy drops to confuse any possible enemy on the ground. As to the specific purpose of the helicopters, the other inserted via fast rope a four-man Navy SEAL reconnaissance and surveillance team in a saddle between Sao Paulo SAR and Gatitao SAR, a peak just to the south of Sao Paulo SAR. The insert point was roughly 1.5 miles and the nearest named area of interest. The team members were team leader Navy Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy of SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1, and also joining him was Petty Officer 2nd Class Danny Dietz from SEAL Team Delivery Vehicle 2, and also along was Petty Officer 2nd Class Matthew G. Axelson from SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1, and of course Navy Hospital Corpsman Special Class Marcus Luttrell of Team Delivery Vehicle 1. After moving to a predetermined covered overwatch position from which the SEALs could observe the named areas of interest, by a freak accident the team was discovered by local goat herders. Determined that they were civilians, not combatants, Lieutenant Murphy released them according to the rules of engagement. Now, the team, surmising that they would likely be compromised, retreated to a fallback position. Within an hour, the SEAL reconnaissance and surveillance team was attacked by Shah and his men, who were armed with RPK machine guns, AK-47s, RPG-7 rocket-propelled grenades, and also an 82mm mortar. The intensity of the incoming fire, combined with the type of attack, forced the SEAL team into the northeast gulch of Sao Paulo SAR, on the Shuriak Valley side of the Sao Paulo SAR. The SEALs made a number of attempts to contact their combat operations centre with a multi-band radio and then with a satellite phone, but the team could not establish consistent communication other than for a period long enough to indicate that they were under attack. The SEALs' firefight with Shah Taliban forces began along a high elevation ridgeline. The highest peak of this ridgeline is about 2,830 metres, that's 9,282 feet, so it's quite a big one. A descent down the east side of the ridgeline leads into the Shuriak Valley, a northeastern gulch in which the SEALs became trapped. It was in that direction, above the village of Salar Ban. To the west of Sao Paulo SAR ridgeline is actually the Korangal Valley. Now, the four brave SEALs began a fight for their lives, during which they were chased down over the course of about 3 hours. Each of them was shot multiple times but continued to fight on. They even threw themselves down the side of a mountain to escape, causing themselves horrific injuries, but still continuing to fight afterwards. They have been estimated to have killed somewhere between 25 and 35 Taliban and pursued possibly by up to 200, though this is not confirmed. Now, since the SEAL reconnaissance and surveillance team had been ambushed, the focus of the operation immediately shifted from disrupting ACM activity to finding, aiding and extracting the survivors. The operation was now known as Operation Red Wings 2. After the broken transmission from the SEAL team, their position and situation were unknown, so members of SEAL Team 10, along with US Marines and aviators from the 160th SAW, were prepared to dispatch a quick reaction force, but command to launch this was delayed for a number of hours, but then a quick reaction force finally launched, consisting of two MH-47 Special Operations aircraft from the 160th, two UH-60 conventional Army Aviation Black Hawk helicopters, and two AH-64 Apache attack helicopters. Now, the two MH-47s took the lead, and upon reaching Sao Paulo SAR, the two MH-47s received small arms fire. During an attempt to insert some SEALs onto the ground who were riding one of the MH-47 helicopters, one of Ahmad Shah's men fired an RPG-7 rocket-propelled grenade, which struck the transmission below the rear rotor assembly, causing the aircraft to immediately plummet to the ground. killing all 8 160th Army Special Operations aviators and crew and all 8 SEALs who were passengers on board. That included 2 commanders as well, Eric Christensen of SEAL Team 10 and also Stephen C. Reich. They were killed within those 16 people. Commander control, obviously C2 at this point, was lost, and neither visual nor radio contact could be established with the SEAL team. At this point, which was late afternoon, storm clouds were moving in over the region. The other aircraft returned to their respective bases, so they put together another massive search, at first from the ground and then later on in the air once again. The bodies of those 16 people, by the way, were later recovered. Now back to the ambush on the ground, and this is where things get, dark and really sad. After putting up this epic fight against huge numbers, Murphy was killed after he left his cover position and went to a clearing away from the mountains, exposing himself to a howl of gunfire in order to get a clear signal to contact headquarters for relaying the dire situation and requesting immediate support for his team. He dropped the satellite phone after being shot more than 14 times, but picked the phone back up again and finished the call. While being shot, he just signed off by saying thank you, then continued fighting from his exposed position until he died from his wounds. Now, Axelson was severely wounded after taking the brunt of the initial attack and the fall with his teammates. After regrouping with his team, he began firing back, and hours later he suffered a gunshot wound to the head, and by this point of time he'd been shot in several places, including his chest and head, and then later died of his wounds also. Now, Dietz was mortally wounded after taking a big brunt of the initial attack and the fall. This led him to lose his ability to walk, and as a result, Luttrell had carried him on their way down the mountain. Dietz firing actually from his back. Now, this rigorous activity was repeated several times until a bullet penetrated the back of his head and killed him instantly. And Luttrell actually says that Dietz's dead weight came as quite a surprise as he fell down the edge of the mountain, with Dietz's body still on his back. It was actually because of that he was quite severely injured himself. After an intensive search, the bodies of Dietz, Murphy, Axelson were eventually recovered a week later, and obviously the only survivor, Marcus Luttrell, on that day was left unconscious, unaccounted for, with a number of fractures and other serious wounds. As the severely wounded Luttrell regained consciousness and descended the gulch, he encountered a Pashtun named Mohammed Gulab Khan from the mountain village of Salarban, simply known as Gulab. He took Luttrell into his home that first day, and he evoked the assistance of others from his village to protect Luttrell until American forces could be contacted. This was in accordance with the cultural tradition of the Pashtunwali, whereby asylum, also known as Nanawatai, is offered to a person to protect them from their enemies. In his condition, without this assistance, he probably would have been killed or at least captured by the Taliban, and it's likely that Luttrell would have definitely been at least turned over to the Taliban as he descended into Korengal, probably instead of Shuriek. Now, not long before Operation Red Wings, relations with the Americans had improved in the Shurek Valley and the Greater Peck River region because of humanitarian work that had taken place. Medical services improved, a school was built at Nangalam, and Gulab was aware of these developments and had introduced himself to the Marine commander there at Nangalam, which was Matt Bartels, when he was visiting Matin. It was within this context that Gulab had stumbled upon Luttrell and gave him sanctuary, so those things were really worth it. The Taliban leader Ahmad Shah knew that the wounded man was, he was tracking, had to pass through the village of Salarban as he made his way downhill. Through intimidation, Shah was able to ascertain which house sheltered the wounded man and demanded he be turned over. However, Shah could not risk a fight at that stage because he was outnumbered and other relatives and villagers would come to Gulab's aid. Luttrell was subsequently moved to different places until forces could arrive to extract him. Luttrell wrote a note and asked to be taken to an American base at Islamabad. Because Gulab had previously met the Marine commander there, he asked an older man, Sheena, from another part of the village of Salarban to make the trek with the note to that base instead. It required a longer journey down to the trails of the Shurak Valley to Matin, where he hired a cab to drive the Pek Road to Namilam. He met with the commander there, related the story and gave him the note from Luttrell. Now, members of the 305th Rescue Squadron were tasked with attempting the rescue mission and retrieving Luttrell from the village. With only 10 feet of clearance between the mountainside and a cliff, the crew landed their helicopter in intense brownout conditions, and Luttrell was finally taken to safety. Significant international media attention was focused on the ambush and the MH47 shootdown. The size of Shah's group had increased as additional fighters joined his ranks. With the withdrawal of the American and coalition troops at the end of Red Wings 2, Shah and his group were able to return to the Kunar province and began attacks immediately. Ahmed Shah's group in Kunar province was neutralised though, and Shah was seriously wounded during Operation Whalers weeks later in August 2005, and in April 2008 Shah was killed during a shootout with Pakistani police. After recovering from his injuries, Luttrell returned to full duty and he deployed to Ramadi during Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2006 as part of SEAL Team 5. He later had his knees blown out and fractured his spine again. These injuries ultimately led to his discharge. On this September 14th, 2006, Dietz and Axelson were both posthumously awarded the Navy Cross for undaunted courage and heroism. Luttrell was also awarded the Navy Cross, and in a ceremony at the White House in 2007, Murphy was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions during the battle. I know this was a long one, but thank you so much for watching. There'll be some more details of the character that I used in the background in the description below, just so I don't make the video go on too long. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.